Well, I'm Stuart Gauthier, County Agent with the LSU Ag Center here in Lafayette and Vermilion Parish, and welcome to Get It Growing with the Lafayette Master Gardeners. Today we have with us Ms. Genee Foley, who's one of our very active Master Gardeners who helps me co-host this show. We have a special guest, Mr. Robert Turley. He's the County Agent from the Calcasieu Parish area, and he's in charge of the Master Gardener program there. He's also a wealth of knowledge about daylilies, and we decided we're going to dedicate our show to the daylily. And one of the reasons why we want to really focus on this plant is because it's the #1 perennial plant in the United States. And as you drive around Acadiana, you're sure to see a lot of these plants blooming this time of year.
And before we start talking about the wonderful world of daylilies, we want to talk just a minute about another wonderful floral opportunity that's going to be available to Acadiana gardeners this weekend. The Acadian Orchid Society is sponsoring an Orchid Reflections Show. It's free to the public. It will be located at the Iron Nelson Horticulture Center in the east wing of the main building. They will have plants on display and vendors. The times are Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday from noon to 5, Saturday from 10 to 5, and Sunday from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock p.m. Even if you are not interested in growing orchids, this is a wonderful educational opportunity. You know, the variety of orchids are really mind-boggling, from the big old, large Catalina corsage ones to the little miniatures. It's a fun thing to go to just to see the colors and the types of orchids available, even if you're not interested in growing them. If you've picked one up, you know that orchids are more available now. The discount centers have orchids. There's orchid vendors in town. If you've picked one up and you're having trouble, growing it, this is the place to go. These people will talk orchids with you all day long. You will learn a lot, and they will have a lot of fun educating you and helping you with your orchid growth. This weekend, our Nelson Horticultural Center, the Orchid Show. And now we're back to the wonderful world of our daylilies.
We thought we'd start out by, first of all, talking about how easy it is to grow daylilies. And one of the reasons, as we said, they're the most popular perennial plant in the United States is that they're very easy not only to grow, but also to propagate and share with your friends. The history of the daylily, I think, is kind of an interesting thing. And Robert, when did we first start seeing daylilies show up in the United States?
Well, the old Hemicalis fulva and flavor were the old orange and yellows. Actually, these were here in the 1700s. They came from England, and they were brought over, and they actually traveled with the pioneers.
Sure.
The old orange fulva that we see is called the road ditch daylily, that you find growing around some of the old home places that have been abandoned through the pioneer days. So daylilies has been around quite a while. Now, this development of the new hybrids and this hybridization really didn't get started probably got into it until the 40s. But then the 50s and the 60s saw another great surge, and then the 70s and 80s until now we have the big ornate tetraploids with the double edgings and this big round full forms, big stalks and foliage compared to the more daintier, some of our small petals, small flowers, orange and yellow golds. Of course, the reds came a little later, and all these other colors, our basic colors were orange and yellow, and they were developed, your reds and your purples and pinks, through natural selecting. When they saw the pigment start showing, they just breed those with those, kept selecting. The red is the red, the pink is the pink, until you got what you have now. The daylily is a very hybridized daylily. To get where we are, so we have some very beautiful, beautiful flowers with the ornate ruffling. You see some of the edging, shadings, the deep green throats, which are very popular. Very beautiful flowers. Of course, the daylily is called a daylily because the flowers only last a day. And of course, they normally have a lot of buds on their scapes, so you get this repeat flowering every day. So there's always a lot of flowers on. And in the South, we not only can have branch scapes, we can have reblooming. I tend to rebloom here because that's been selected for in the breeding too. So we can have daylilies blooming all the way from late March till it gets cold, too cold for them, which is, be in December.
A long flowering period for a relatively small plant.
Right.
When do we see the majority of our daylily blooms?
Our peak season in South Louisiana is going to be it's going to be late May. Right now in June, we're probably past peak, but I would say mid-May to mid-June is our big push for the blooming period.
Now, are many of these newer, what we're going to call the fancy, I've heard you mention a chemical, that they're using a chemical in developing?
Well, they're still using what we call there's a product or chemical called colchicine that is used, I don't know if it still is, but it was one of the products used for treatment of gout. People used to suffer from gout, maybe they still do, with joints and things like that. And the saffron, one of the crocus flowers, they got it from that. And what it does in the treatment of the plant, it interferes with the cell division. As a cell, all the chromosomes line up, they split and line to the sides, and a cell wall forms between them. Then you have two new cells. What colchicine does, that cell that's dividing, it prevents that middle labellum or that cell wall from developing. So once it does that in the cell, then resumes normal and then has an extra set of chromosomes. So what it does, makes bigger cells, has more genetic information replicated. So the thought was that the more chromosomes you have, more chance of variability. All I've seen in tetraploids is, of course, they have the very heavy flowers and this extra, because the cells are so large, that this edging that we see in the diploid like this becomes doubled, so your cells express themselves a lot easier for the eye to see. And these colorings were already in the diploid, but by that time the tetraploid had caught on, and all your new breeders who've come into the daylily system or societies all jumped on the tetraploid bandwagon and pretty well abandoned the diploid, except for maybe a few of us. And but that's kind of where we are on that.
What did they breed for the shorter, stockier plants, or that was just a byproduct?
Well, originally the daylily people were women who actually started Daylily Society, and they liked the shorter things. Miss Spalding's, the aunt and the niece over in Iowa, Louisiana, liked the dwarf ones, and Miss Brown over in the Beaumont area liked the dwarf. So you got a lot of short daylilies. So
they actually bred for
right.
it.
Yeah, they selected. Right. They selected for the shortest. They'd use those varieties and throw away the tall ones. But there's a trend back to them. I guess the ideal height would be around 25 to 28 inches branched.
Right, and of course you can select. We tell people, if you like the shorter ones, you grow the shorter ones. If you like the taller ones, you buy.
Well,
according to your
in landscaping, you need your shorters in the front, your taller toward the back. So it gives you a lot of selection to use in any kind of landscape setting, and that's what's nice about the daylily.
Any color, we've given you a wonderful
range
of colors.
We have, I would say pretty well, we have white. We don't have a true blue. All the other colors we have.
What's a good place to plant them?
Well, daylilies are sun plants, so they prefer full sun. They'll take some shade for best production. Plant them in full sun. If you can block off, of course, any sun, the western sun is always the best one because it's the hottest. Flowers will hold up better without the western sun on them. Daylilies like just a good garden soil. You don't have to really soup up the soil. They'll grow in our native soils as long as they have any appreciable tilt to them. Good friable soil. You can grow from just plain old garden soil to these highly beefed up beds with organic matter, and of course your scapes and flowers will be twice as large. Like any plant, they'll appreciate any extra care you give them. But you can grow daylilies pretty well just in a good garden soil. I like to fertilize mine in late February with 8-24-24. The low nitrogen, a higher P and K for flower production, root, and plant development. Enough nitrogen to keep them green and growing. A lot of the growers who use the high bark and high organic types use a higher analysis of nitrogen. I find that high nitrogen tends to aggravate mite problems that you can get in daylilies sometimes. I normally don't. I've never had a mite problem because I don't use high nitrogen fertilizers.
Can we go back a minute to sunshine? I had a question. Do some of the lighter, like the pinks, prefer a little bit of shade? Have you found that? Do some of your colors fade out in brighter sun?
It would be with your dark or your reds would like some of the will like some shade. The dark colored ones, yes. This is almost a charcoal in natural light. I don't know what it's showing here, but you have a lot of muted dark charcoal-like colors in there with a very green throat. Some of your reds have traditionally liked a little extra shade, but I find with a good using good phosphorus and potassium in your soil that your substance will be a lot better with your flowers. Especially with your newer hybrids, because they are selected for better substance of flowers. When you get in some of the older varieties, these are your UF, what we call them a while ago?
Unusual forms.
Unusual forms.
Unusual forms. I've heard people call them spiders. I think that's just a common term.
There's a measurement, and right off the top I don't remember because I don't pay much attention to that. I just call them narrow segmented, and I think the daily people call them just unusual forms, and I think that's probably a good term as any. You find the very long, narrow segments, which gives you a finer texture and bloom to add in the landscape with some of your more heavier, fuller and rounder forms. I just think it's the daylilies. Now we have such a wide variety to choose from, and I think everybody can find something they would like. Certainly in forms.
Once you plant them, how long can they live? How long can you keep that bed going?
Well, daylilies should live forever, as long as they're not run over or put concrete over, things like that. Some varieties increase very vigorously, others don't increase a lot. The more vigorous they are, the more often you need to transplant, dig them up, divide them. Keep them in I think about at least 3 years in one spot. You ought to dig them up and replant them. Loosen the soil. I think soil compaction in this part of the country is probably more of a problem. Soil just gets tighter and tighter. A little organic matter will help that. If it's clay, add some sand and some organic matter. And because roots need oxygen.
Just sort of rework your bed.
Rework your beds and replant
them,
right.
Or divide it if it needs dividing.
Right.
Okay, let's see, make sure that we've brought such a wonderful array. We've covered we haven't talked about the eyes.
Okay, the eye, this is, the eye patterns are, of course, a very light pattern is called a halo, as compared to one that's real dark is called eye pattern. This pattern comes out of the old daylily or the euphorbia species. This carries way back to them, where it came from. And these very flat flowers are very popular. So we started out with this, with the narrow petals, and everybody kept breeding, get wider and wider and wider forms till we got the big round wide petals, which a lot of people like. Now there's a segment of people who like the narrow petals, and that's fine. But the eyes can be anywhere from lavender, dark, almost a dark brown, purple, almost a black, with any shade of other color in it. A lot of the tetraploids have the big eyes with double edges. They'll have the same color around the edges, which is very attractive. And those are very ornate varieties. You use those up close where you can appreciate all the ornate breeding that's in them.
You put that like the side of a door where you're going to...
Making a big planting on the side of a road or big landscape, unless your best colors for color in a landscape is going to be yellow, it will show up way over on the other side of the garden. And people will gravitate to that because they can see those bright yellow colors.
While you have this one up, why don't we talk about the lace edges too?
Yeah, all right. Well, this is what we call ruffling, or the pie crust ruffling, has this very heavy ruffling, and is very popular. People at least like ruffling in the daylilies, rather than just the plain edge. Very nice, and we see that in some of the larger, very large flowers. It shows up. You can see some of the lacing that shows up in some of the edges, where you get into this type of daylily. Right.
It's absolutely gorgeous. I hope the camera can pick up, some of the subtleties in these, where they've got the yellow, they've got the peach, and then they come back with the lime green throat. You get a far away effect of splash of color, and then, like Robert was saying, if you're planting them for close observation, you really appreciate the variety of colors within each individual flower. And the diamond dusting. A few of these have the little sparkling, glittery thing going on too when the sunlight hits it. I mean, they're really an amazing breed of flowers.
Yeah.
And we do have a very nice planting of them at the Aaron Nelson Horticulture Center. We have a demo bed there that is in full bloom right now, and we'd encourage the public to come out and look at some of these different varieties that we have growing there.
Okay, we failed to mention the double types, where the stamens and the reproductive parts of the flower have been converted into petaloids, or extra petals. So you get this doubling effect. Double daylilies have a big following of people in the Daylily Society who love doubles. Here again, they come in different types of doubles, different colors, and we have them in the large flower type, and where's that little bitty one? And you can get doubles in the little miniatures even too. So
this would be a great flower for a child.
Oh,
the little minis.
Those are having a little spot where you pass by frequently. They're quite nice. That's where I have mine, and you see it, notice it. So double daylilies are here, singles, narrow, unusual forms, very ornate, different colors, easy to grow flower. Notice you might want to talk about our seed pods. This is seed pods that are developed from just natural open pollination. Either the wind or bees got pollen on the stigmatic surface of the flower. And let's see, the best one to show that is right here. If you can get a close-up of the actual flower. Okay. Right here is the reproductive parts. This is the female part. This has the little structure in the top here called the stigma. This is the part here that has the anthers containing the pollen. Pollen is transferred to the stigmatic surface here. The little pollen will germinate just like a seed. It grows down with the sperm will follow it, and it goes into the back of the flower and pollinates or fertilizes the little ovule or the egg, forming seeds.
Now, because you did this manually, would you get a yellow daylily from this seed? In all probability.
Probability to be, most of them will be shades of yellow, but you could get a pink or some other shade because daylilies have been so interbred, hybridized, so there's a lot of genetic material in there.
Yeah, and I wanted people to be aware of that yes, if you're growing from seed, you can get many colors, even though you're getting the seed from a yellow daylily or a wine-colored daylily.
Now, if you open up the seed pod, and when they turn black, then they're mature. Usually the pod will start turning light yellow and even to yellow, and then they'll start cracking, and the seeds will be black. You can plant them immediately and keep them moist, and they'll germinate within 2 to 3 weeks. Real easy, little grass-like plants will come up. They're monocots, so they'll look like grass coming up.
And it's going to take how many years until bloom?
But if you grow them real fast, good culture, you can flower them the following summer.
Okay. So
certainly, and if not 1, 2.
Yeah, if you nurse them along well, 2 years probably is a safe bet for the average gardener.
Right. Here's an interesting thing that occurs on daylilies. These little plantlets that arise at these nodes. If we don't get branching like this type where we get buds, then a lot of times these little plantlets will arise on these stems. Now, this is genetic, so it occurs on quite a few varieties. Preferably, we like a clean skate, but because this is a genetic thing, it occurs in a lot of varieties, and people just can't throw away a beautiful flower if it had it on there. But you can take and cut. I don't have my pocket knife or my scissors with me. You didn't bring anything to cut with. You can cut. What I like to do is just cut this about an inch, inch and a half below your little plantlet, and do the same about to the top of it, like this. Now, then you can push it down in where the base is just inside some moist media, and keep it moist, and it will root. Or you can put it in water and it'll root.
And this helps, leaving the stem on it helps give it some stability.
Right,
With the first year in the garden, we popped them off of the stalk, and then you're trying to keep this little plantlet in soil, and when you're watering it, it tends to float away. So that stem's giving you some stability while it makes root.
If you can wait till you see some little root it's beginning to form, then it'll root a lot easier.
Well, let's talk about the most popular way that we would want to propagate them.
Okay.
And this is a plant here. We're going to talk a little bit about a problem that it's having, but in the fall of the year is a very good time, September, October, to go ahead and divide up your plantings, and maybe you can talk a little bit about how you like to do that.
Okay. Well, this plant here is covered with what we call daylily rust, and that's why this plant is here. But for purposes of division, you've got all these fans in here. Can you see the?
Yeah, tilt it.
You come up a little bit. All right. See these various fans of plants in here? You can just take this plant and shake it off, pull those plants apart, trim the foliage in kind of a V shape, and trim some of the roots off, and then you can replant the plant right back. This plant here, variety, is loaded with rust. I wouldn't even plant this plant. I'd throw it away. The only reason I kept this plant, I bought it this spring because it's an older variety and I wanted to use it. And we had this cool spring and rust had just hit it. So this plant here is going to go in the garbage can. Because all these varieties you see on this table here come out of my garden, there's no rust on them. If the rust shows up like this on a daylily, I'll throw it away because there are so many varieties of daylilies that you can select for natural resistance. So you don't have to spray daylilies. They're the perennial supreme, and that's the way we want to keep them. And we do that by selecting and using varieties that are resistant to a lot of pests. Rust is one that was native in its homeland and it finally got here. We didn't have a problem with it, but we know there is natural resistance and tolerance to the rust, so we can select varieties that don't have a problem with it. So that's all we need to do is have something else to spray for.
Now, right, and people do ask us, and this is what we're seeing, says that when the temperatures change, you're going to see the disease go down. So if you're trying to nurse one of your grandmother's daylilies, I have one of mine, I'm going to keep it. I trim the diseased foliage off, you give it a little tender loving care, and then when the temperature changes, the plant's going to do better.
Right.
So, you can select, but if you have some supplemental plants that you're trying to nurse along, just be aware that it's going to look sort of ratty for a while.
And we see the most amount of disease probably in the fall of the year, sometimes in the spring. And in the heat of the summer, when the temperatures get up in the 90s, this rust likes cooler temperatures. It kind of goes away a little bit. But unfortunately, this is probably the main problem you'll have with this plant. We do get a few calls sometimes on mites, like Robert was saying, sometimes on heavily fertilized plants. We have aphid problems sometimes in the spring. Those are usually relatively minor. There's some problems with a problem called leaf streak, where you get some diseased foliage when they're stressed. But for the most part, they're pretty much carefree. And I think the easiest thing, like Robert was saying, to do is, this is a great plant because there's, 60,000 different name varieties. If you like to play with plants, trade plants, choose the ones that are good and that you can, and get rid of the bad ones, because there's enough good ones out there that we don't need to be out there all the time with fungicides trying to keep plants alive. There's enough good ones that we can grow that we don't have to spray constantly.
And people do ask about spraying, and unfortunately, the time that you would be spraying is when the daylilies at their peak. So who wants to be out there whacking off all your buds trying to spray a plant? So select the naturally disease resistant.
For those who want to spray, you want to recommend a product?
There's some products. There's one called Fungaway that some people use. There's a fungicide called Heritage that's real good. Some of the propiconazole. There's one Fertilome systemic fungicide that same thing as Banner that will work. Daconil, diethane. There's a number of fungicides. We have a lot of free information in our office, but we really want to encourage you to, to really over the next, few years, if you get involved with them, try to grow some of the more resistant types, and we do have a list of those available at our office. We'd like to thank everybody for listening to our show today on the Daylillies, and we hope that if you have any questions about it, give our office a call, and we want to thank Robert for coming here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I think you can really see how there was an excellent variety that you can enjoy in your garden.
We're off. Okay.
No.
Oh, if we do, they.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. I don't know. I kept getting tongue twisted. I don't know. I never.